In the headlines, addressing the National Assembly, President Park Geun-hye says now is the golden time to boost the Korean economy's recovery. North Korea spurns South Korea's offer of high-level talks this week in its protest against propaganda leaflets floated across the border by South Korean activists. And an unmanned NASA-contracted rocket explodes midair early Tuesday evening, about 6 seconds after liftoff. The good news, though, is that no deaths or injuries have been reported. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Primetime News. I'm Kang Tae-ri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with President Park Geun-hye's parliamentary address today, where she presented her push for next year's government budget, which comes in at nearly $20 billion more than this year's.
In it are measures, she says, that will innovate the Korean economy. The president appealed to lawmakers to quickly pass the budget bill, as well as other related bills that are still stalled at the National Assembly. Our Choi You-sun tells us more.
Despite the risks of financial losses and ballooning debt, the president said if Korea doesn't invest more to address the challenges of low growth, low inflation, and a weak Japanese yen, the Korean economy could fall into a long-term slump. Manufacturing production in the third quarter shrank by nearly 1%, and exports also dropped significantly.
지금이야말로 우리 경제가 도약하느냐, 정체하느냐의 갈림길에서 경제를 다시 세울 수 있는 마지막 골든 타임입니다.
Referring to her three-year economic innovation plan, President Park talked about her vision of a creative economy which involves converging IT and different sectors to spur growth and stimulate the job market. And so the government will increase its support for entrepreneurs, startups, and small to mid-sized firms next year by 17% to a total of some $8 billion. The government has also significantly increased funds for safety and welfare to bolster both the hard and software of safety management and to provide the country's seniors and low-income households with more financial support. President Park also asked the parliament to cooperate in completing by the year's end reforms of the public pension system, which has suffered an expanding deficit.
그동안 국가를 위해 헌신해온 공무원들의 희생을 요구해야 한다는 점에서 솔직히 어느 정부도 이런 개혁이 두렵고 피하고 싶을 것입니다. 그러나 매년 막대한 국민 세금이 투입되어야 하는 상황을 그대로 방치할 수는 없습니다.
Before wrapping up her speech, President Park said the government managing finances alone will do no good unless the parliament moves to pass a backlog of bills designed to improve the people's livelihoods and to strengthen the nation's safety system. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
And right after her policy address at the National Assembly, she also held a meeting with leaders and policymakers of the two main rival parties. Our Ji Myung-gil tells us more.
At the meeting, President Park Geun-hye and party leaders shared the view that the rival parties put aside differences and speed up long-stalled legislation that has been blamed for a slow economic recovery and public sector reform.
원래 목표는 그 경제를 활성화시켜서 피해소득 늘리고 하겠다는 건데 그 고리는 끊어지는 거거든요. 예산만 써버리고 그렇게 되지 않도록 시급한 상황이고 꼭 필요한 법안들만 이제 골라서 이렇게 부탁을 드리는 거니까 좀 시급히 처리를 좀 해주셨으면 하고.
Both parties agreed to pass next year's budget by the legal deadline of December 2nd, and the three bills seen as the most urgent by the end of this month. The three bills will help uncover the truth behind April's ferry sinking, enable public sector restructuring, and allow the government to go after illegally obtained assets. Speaking of the government's economic policies, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy's interim leader raised concerns over the government's stimulus measures.
Finance Minister Choi Geun-hye's stimulus drive dubbed Choinomics does not seem to lack specific policies to actually spur economic growth and restore consumer confidence. We believe the key to economic revitalization is improving livelihoods of the general public.
Moon said he believed the president will long be remembered in the country's political history if her government successfully removes inefficiencies in the public sector or reforms the pension program for civil servants by the end of the president's term in 2017. Wednesday's meeting with rival party leaders and policymakers comes as President Park seeks a breakthrough in the prolonged political deadlock between the two rival parties. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Tomorrow's high-level meeting proposed by South Korea has been scrapped as North Korea says it will not show up unless the anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaigns by South Korean activists are banned. Seoul says it's still open to talks but added that it has no plans to reach out to North Korea for now. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
North Korea has turned down South Korea's proposal for a second round of high-level talks slated for this Thursday. In a message sent early Wednesday morning via the Inter-Korean military hotline, the North said it is up to Seoul to decide whether to proceed with the high-level talks or to cling on to the anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaigns by South Korean activists. South Korea's unification ministry reiterated it has no legal grounds to ban the activities of civic groups.
Although we maintain a consistent stance of resolving issues through inter-Korean dialogue, we cannot give in to unjustifiable demands.
The two Koreas agreed to meet for high-level talks sometime between late October and early November upon a visit to South Korea by a high-level North Korean delegation last month. Since then, tensions have escalated over the controversial leaflet launches, even leading to an exchange of fire across the border. While the meeting may not happen within the planned time frame, some experts say both parties will want to talk things out within this year.
High-level talks are essential for improving inter-Korean relations and must take place this year in order to smooth things out for 2015. It could take some time, but the possibility of a second round of high-level talks is high.
Still, it's a question of who will reach out first. South Korea says it is open to talks, but made clear that it does not have plans to make additional proposals to the North for now. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Tuesday's discovery of the body of one of the still missing victims of the April Sewol-ho ferry disaster was pulled from the sunken hull today. Kwon So-hwa has the details on the search and what's next for the vessel itself.
Nearly 24 hours after it was located inside the wreckage of the ill-fated Sewol-ho ferry, divers were able to retrieve the body this Wednesday evening. It marks the first discovery in 102 days and comes more than 6 months after the ferry capsized and sank off Korea's southwestern coast. Due to decomposition, officials could not identify the body but said DNA tests would be performed soon. The body is presumed to be that of a female victim, as it was wearing stockings and found near a women's restroom on the 4th deck of the vessel. Currently, there are 4 female victims missing, 3 of whom are high school students. Earlier in the day, divers failed in reaching the body due to poor underwater visibility and fast currents, delaying the recovery operations. Victims' families raised doubts about the efficiency of ongoing search efforts as the latest discovery was made in the exact location they had specifically asked divers to search. Divers said they had previously swept the area more than a dozen times, but believe currents may have recently carried the body to where it was found. The discovery pushes the death toll in the tragedy to 295, with 9 still missing. This past weekend, victims' families voted to continue the underwater search operation inside the ferry and to hold off on raising the 6,800-ton vessel. The families of the missing held a press briefing Wednesday afternoon, calling on the government for more thorough search efforts as they believe the body found on Tuesday raises the chance that the rest of the missing have not been carried away. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Korea posted another current account surplus in the month of September. That's 31 months in a row. The Bank of Korea says the surplus stood at $7.6 billion last month, up $420 million from the month before. The central bank attributed the rise to strong exports that went up more than 4% on month. The deficit of services account, which includes spending by Koreans overseas, shrank to $280 million from the $730 million recorded in the summer vacation month of August. Supporting startups and fostering small and mid-sized companies as major exporters is at the heart of President Park Geun-hye's drive to turn Korea into what she calls a creative economy. But there are already signs that startups have a leg up on their much larger Korean counterparts in the global market. Song Ji-sun explains.
Scanning fingerprints is now a common way of keeping work hour records for employees. This Korean company called Suprema has won global recognition for developing and marketing the widest range of products in biometrics and access security industries. As the only company in the world capable of rolling out all products by using its own technologies and parts, it grabbed a 60% share in the fingerprint recognition module market in less than 15 years since its founding.
Many come up with business ideas, but the key to success for startups is commercializing those ideas. We've proved our technical prowess by repeatedly winning in the industry's most coveted competitions.
Suprema is one of some 63 Korean startups that enjoy #1 market share in the global stage, according to Korea's Small and Medium Business Administration. Although the Korean corporate sector is best known for the success of chaebols, or conglomerates, startups account for nearly half of Korea's 130 companies that have grabbed the largest market share in the world. Large companies represent only a quarter of them. The startup stocks range from manufacturers of juicers to vessel engine bearings.
Aggressive investment in research and development is the key to startups could keep their lead in the global market. The leading startups are also actively diversifying their export markets, shipping their products on average of 31 countries overseas.
Even if Korean startups manage to develop competitive technologies, many of them need support in other areas.
These startup businesses venture overseas markets solely with their technologies, but they lack efficient means to gain access to global clients. The government can help them win recognition by arranging exhibitions and other international events.
Industry experts also point out educational reform is needed to foster entrepreneurship and creativity badly needed to turn Korea into a trendsetter from a fast follower. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's business climate ranks as the world's 5th according to the World Bank's Doing Business report, referring to the highest ranking the country has ever achieved. The finance ministry said the achievement also marks the 4th straight year Korea has been listed in the top 10. Spot comes thanks to improvements in business startups, granting construction approvals, and upholding the rights of minority shareholders. The World Bank has been analyzing the business environments of 189 countries every year since 2003. Singapore took the top position, followed by New Zealand and Hong Kong. Korea is charting a path to widespread use of digital documentation, which means a more paperless society not only in meeting rooms and conferences, but also in our daily lives. Our Shin Se-min tells us more on how it's one of the goals being pushed by the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference underway in Busan.
Everything is going digital these days. From paying taxes to filing out resident registration documents, the use of electronic documentation has made tasks like these much more convenient. Korea is already a leader in the government digital documentation field. But some sectors are still reliant on paper, and experts say it may be a while before the use of electronic documentation is as widespread.
It is a cultural task, and it won't be easy trying to bring everyone on board. But considering the era that we live in, digitalizing documents is something that needs to be done, and soon. There will be no more paperwork if it all goes digital.
But there's still a number of obstacles. Only 43% of institutions and businesses in Korea use electronic documentations, lower than the government's aim of 50% by 2015. And experts attribute the gap to a lack of understanding and awareness among everyday users. A group of experts gathered on the sidelines of the Quadrennial ITU conference on Wednesday to discuss the possible directions for Korea in fully implementing these services on the domestic front and making inroads to the global market.
Fostering growth among private enterprises is the key to helping the sector expand. If the government puts more effort into sponsoring these services in the finance and medical sectors, where electronic documents are widely used, there will be no concerns about reaching the everyday user.
The National IT Industry Promotion Agency has already gotten a head start, and officials there say digital documentation services will soon be a reality in the IT sector. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Busan.
It looks like traditional Korean farmers' music, known as nongak, will be added to UNESCO's World Heritage List next month. The panel responsible for adding new cultural items has recommended the South Korean community band music and dance and rituals for inscription. 6 North Korean variations of the traditional folk song Arirang were also recommended and would mark a first for North Korea to make it on the Intangible Cultural Heritage List. South Korea's version of Arirang was added 2 years ago. A final decision will be made at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris in November.
Officials at NASA have confirmed that an unmanned rocket has exploded just seconds after taking off from a launch pad in the U.S.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. This was a privately contracted rocket on its way to the International Space Station. Paul, what went wrong?
Well, in the aftermath of this catastrophic failure, all eyes are on the American space company Orbital Science, which had built the rocket in a multi-billion-dollar deal with NASA. The 14-story Antares rocket erupted in flames just 6 seconds after liftoff from a commercial launch site in Virginia on Tuesday evening. NASA's Mission Control in Houston said there was significant damage to the facility, but confirmed that no one was hurt.
The investigation will include evaluating the debris that we will find around the launch pad and everything associated with it. With that, I do want to caution the public, and Bill will speak a little bit more about that. This is an accident site, and it is a rocket. And it had a lot of hazardous equipment or hazardous materials on board.
The spacecraft was on a mission to deliver a payload of supplies and equipment to the International Space Station. However, NASA says the cargo was not urgent and that the 6-member crew aboard the ISS has enough food to last at least 4 months. And shifting to the Ebola crisis, Australia has been condemned for its move to stop issuing new visas for citizens from West African nations worst hit by the deadly outbreak. Sierra Leone on Tuesday called the measures counterproductive and discriminatory. Meanwhile, Anthony Banbury, the head of the Ebola mission for the UN, said government policies should not deter health workers from joining the international relief efforts.
What I will say is that decisions should be based on science and facts and not hype and hysteria, and decisions should be taken in a way that will promote the most rapid, effective response to the Ebola crisis in West Africa as possible.
The UN mission has set itself a deadline to have 70% of all Ebola cases under treatment by December 1st. And turning to the United States, top federal officials have raised security levels across the country in light of continuing terrorist threats. The Department of Homeland Security on Tuesday defended the move as necessary protection for U.S. government installations and personnel, given recent world events. The agency had cited last week's terror attack on Canada's Parliament Hill. Extra security was ordered in Washington and other major cities, while local law enforcement services were warned to be on guard for possible small-scale attacks. A U.S. official, however, said there had been no credible information about any specific plot against a U.S. target. And finally, Google has unveiled its latest secret project that aims to revolutionize the field of healthcare. The internet search giant announced on Tuesday a new invention that packs millions of special nanoparticles into a swallowable pill. The goal is to utilize the nanotechnology to scan for and eventually treat disease in the human body, from cancer to even high cholesterol.
The analogy in medicine is like, imagine you want to explore Parisian culture, and you do it by flying a helicopter over Paris once a year. That's what doctors do now. And what we're hoping to do is these little particles go out and mingle with the people. We call them back to one place and we ask them, hey, what'd you see? Did you find cancer?
Google says the experimental work is still in the early stages, but added that they were looking for commercial partners who could bring the product to market in the near future. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Stephen Che with a look at Wednesday's sports. Now let's start at the 95th Korean National Sports Festival taking place in beautiful Jeju Island. Archer Kim Woo-jin, he set a new world record, eclipsing a fellow Korean's mark set last year. 22-year-old former world number one used 36 arrows to score 352 points in the recurve bow 70-meter event, surpassing the previous record by 2 points. Previous record holder Kim Jong-ho scored 351 and Olympic champion Oh Jin-hyuk got 348 to round out the world-class podium. And moving on, we get to the live games on the evening. Going to the doubleheader in the KBL, first up, the KCC Aegis hosted the SK Knights in Jeonju. Now SK surges to the lead at the half and it proves too much for KCC. 5 players hit double figures as the Knights win 83-71. Meanwhile, down in Busan, Samsung takes control early, forcing KT to scramble all game. Despite a late run by the home team, the Thunders grabbed the victory 77-67. Our next stop takes us to Cheonan for pro volleyball. The Hyundai Capital Skywalkers went up against the LIG Graders, and they split the first 2 sets 25-21 and 25-20. But from there, it's the Skywalkers on cloud 9. They take the next two 25-19 and 25-18 for the 3-1 victory. Meanwhile, over to the MLB. The World Series is headed to a deciding Game 7 as the Kansas City Royals crushed the San Francisco Giants 10-0 in Game 6. KC third baseman Mike Moustakas started the 7-run rally in the second inning with a run-scoring double and homer in the 7th inning en route to the series-saving victory. A new World Series champion is set to be crowned with Game 7 taking place Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. Thursday in Korea. And coming back to basketball, the 2014-15 NBA season kicked off Tuesday evening in the United States. Opening night featured 3 games. Defending champs San Antonio Spurs edged out the Dallas Mavericks 101-100. The New Orleans Pelicans took down the Orlando Magic 101-84, and the Houston Rockets dominated the LA Lakers 108-90, giving all 3 wins to the mighty Southwest Division. The rest of the league will be in action Wednesday in the U.S. or Thursday morning in Korea. And that's all I have for now. Stay tuned for your weather up next. Have a great night.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with weather updates. Winter is just around the corner and ski resorts here in Korea are preparing to open soon. Now, today was another brisk and chilly autumn day, and most nations saw a 15-degree gap in temperatures between the day and night. Conditions continue to remain dry over on the eastern coast of Gangwon-do province as well as in Jeju. Besides that, currently we are under mostly clear skies, but clouds are moving in down south, and cloudier conditions will lead to light showers tomorrow evening along the western coastal regions and on Jeju. Looking ahead, some unwelcome news for baseball fans, as we may be in for some nationwide heavy downpours on Friday, which will continue through Sunday. On Thursday, Seoul will reach 21, while cities down south hit the low 20s. On to other regions, cloudy Jeju makes it to 21, while Dokdo hits 18. That's all the updates for now. I'll be back with more after midnight.
Thanks, Bo-kyung. And that's Primetime News for this Wednesday. I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Kang Tae-ri. We'll see you again soon. Have a great night.